Hi, everybody. Just as you know, checking a few things here before we get started. We'll start in about 22 seconds. This English lesson about hobbies and pastimes. I'll explain the difference between hobbies and pastimes once we get started. By the way, there is no difference. They're the same thing. Let me do a little audio check here. Looks like everything is working well. Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson where I'm going to talk about hobbies and pastimes. I should tell you that I did do a lesson on hobbies, I think 2 years ago almost, but I only talked about 17 or 18 different hobbies. In this English lesson today, I'll talk about, I think about 40 hobbies, something like that. If you're wondering what hobbies and pastimes are, they are things that you do for fun when you're not working and when you're not at school. So they're the things that you do in life that you enjoy, and you'll get an understanding in a bit about what they are. We use the word pastime sometimes. It means the same thing as hobby, but it's kind of an older word. You might hear it when someone says, "What's your country's national pastime?" Canada's national pastime is hockey. I think in the US, the national pastime is baseball. But a hobby or a pastime is something that you do for fun. I should mention as well that this lesson will not be about sports. One of the things people do in their spare time, something that might be a hobby, is they might play a sport. This will not be about sports. This is about all the hobbies that aren't sports. So hopefully that makes some sense to you. Before we get started, I do want to say hi to everyone in the chat. If you don't know who I am, I'm Bob the Canadian. Let me do a quick technical audio check here. Looks like everything is working. Let me just mention a few things before we get started. Number one, please use the chat for English conversations. Please be respectful of Dave and Todd as they moderate the chat. I'm very thankful that they are here to do that. And then just enjoy your time here. If you have a question, there is a form that you can fill out to ask the question. Make sure the question is on the topic of hobbies or pastimes. If you ask me a question about English grammar or something, I won't answer it today. I wanted to mention one more thing. It's extremely windy outside today. The wind is gusting to 80 kilometers an hour, and it's going to go up to 100 kilometers an hour. So what that means is there's a small chance the power might go out. There's a small chance that during the live stream, I will not have electricity. One moment. Excuse me. So if all of the sudden the live stream stops, I apologize in advance. The weather is unpredictable today. Very, very cold, very, very windy outside. I do want to say hi to a lot of people in the chat. Hi to Tony. Hi to Rod, the Brazilian English teacher. Brent, American English from this guy. SEO Wu, I know Norma is here. Huang Vo, Vitaly Smirnov is here. Let me scroll back and see. Evgeny is here. Al Gore is here. Key Park is here. Madi is here. And many other people are also here in the chat. Thanks for being here. I hope we have a great lesson. Let's get started. So I'm talking about things that people do for fun. So one of the things that people do for fun is maybe they like photography. Photography is when you go outside and take pictures of nature. Maybe you take pictures of people. Maybe you take pictures of buildings or the city. But if you like photography and you do it as a hobby, we call you an amateur photographer. That's different than a professional photographer. A professional photographer takes pictures for money. It's their job to take pictures. But if your hobby is photography, we would say that you're an amateur photographer. So an amateur photographer spends a little bit of money, buys really good cameras. They buy what they can afford, and they spend a lot of time taking pictures. And then now they might spend time editing pictures on their computer as well. So part of being an amateur photographer, part of having photography as a hobby, is not just taking the pictures, but also editing the pictures on your computer. So the first hobby that I talk about, that I just talked about, is photography. Some of you might be actors. So you can work as an actor, but some people also perform in plays every once in a while because they enjoy acting. So in my area of Ontario, there are some local acting groups. So you can join a group, and every year that group meets and they put on a play. Again, they are amateur actors. They have a job during the day. Maybe they work at the grocery store. Maybe they're a car mechanic. But at night or on the weekends, they go and they practice a play with other people, and then perhaps they put on a performance later in the year. So maybe you are an actor, maybe you work during the day at a hotel, but at night you're part of an acting group. So acting can be a hobby. You might memorize your lines. So actors memorize their lines, and then they will go to a practice, and then eventually they will put on a performance or a show. Crafting. So I think this is bricolage en français. Some of my French viewers can let me know. But crafting is any time you make things out of paper, out of small items. You might make something out of cardboard and then paint it. You might create things out of like used bottles. Anytime you make things out of different materials, we would say that you are crafting. So maybe you have a photograph and you want to make a frame for it. So maybe you craft something out of old wood or some plastic or some paper. So crafting is just simply making things. Kids do a lot of crafting. My kids do a lot of crafting. So when you craft, you have scissors and paper and cardboard and construction paper. Construction paper is a hard kind of paper and it comes in different colors. You have glue, you have paper clips, you might have a little bit of paint. I might have mentioned that already. But crafting is another hobby that some people have. And it's not just for children, okay? Some adults will actually do some crafting as well. So knitting and sewing, these two areas, there's actually, I could do a whole lesson on things that you can make out of yarn or thread or fabric, okay? So knitting is when you have two needles and you knit yarn together to make a sweater or a winter hat or mittens. Sewing is any time you sew fabric together, maybe with a sewing machine. What you see in the picture here is someone using a sewing machine. But besides knitting and sewing, there's crocheting, there's needlepoint. There are all kinds of hobbies involving fabric, clothing, thread, and some people really, really enjoy it. Some people make small stuffed animals for children. Some people make curtains or pillows or sweaters, but not everyone buys all of their clothes or all of their fabric items in a store. Some people enjoy sewing or knitting. I don't do either of these, although when I was a child, I did a little bit of needlepoint, or what we also call cross-stitching. It was a lot of fun. My mom taught me how to make a little cat on a piece of fabric. I really enjoyed it. I also poked my finger with the needle by accident, and it bled a little bit. That was not an enjoyable experience. Woodworking. So woodworking is a hobby that sometimes older people do when they're retired. I know a couple older gentlemen who are retired and they really enjoy woodworking. So woodworking is when people buy wood, they cut the wood, and they either build furniture or other small items. The men I know build wooden children's toys. So they have a little shop in their garage. They have a little woodworking shop. That's the area or the building where you do woodworking. And they have all different tools. They have a saw. This man is sanding the wood so it's nice and smooth. But they just have a really nice area where they can do woodworking. So they go and they buy some wood. They get a plan for for a children's toy or a birdhouse, and then they spend some time every few days doing some woodworking. I think woodworking might be a hobby that I will take up when I retire. When you talk about hobbies, you often mention that people take up a hobby. So you'll say things like this: did you hear Joe took up woodworking? Yeah, he's doing woodworking now. Or did you hear that Jane has taken up photography? she's bought a really nice camera and she's doing some photography just for fun. So woodworking is another, sorry, we don't say another, it's another, another hobby or pastime. I do think I might do this. I live on the farm. I might make a nice little woodworking shop someday. When I was younger, I learned woodworking in high school. There was actually a class, and I really enjoyed it. So I think that might be a peaceful hobby for me to do someday. Painting. So this is not something I enjoy, but some people love painting. So they love, I'll do paint by numbers. I don't know if you know what that is, but paint by numbers is when you buy a little painting kit, and then there's the painting is ready to go. It's just not painted, and then there's all different areas, and they'll have a small number in it. So the number 1, and then you look, and then you put that color in that spot. That's the kind of painting I would do. But if you paint as a hobby, it probably means that you like going outside to different places and you set up your easel and your canvas and you have your paint brushes and your paint, and then you paint a landscape, or maybe you have a studio and you have someone come over and sit for you and then you paint a portrait of them. So I'm using a lot of words in there and phrases related to painting as a hobby. Very interesting hobby though. I know a few former students of mine who do painting as a hobby, and they're really good at it. I think if they could sell their paintings, they could be professionals, but that just takes a little bit of time. So coloring. So coloring used to be for children, but adults more and more are doing this as a hobby. This picture is, I think, an adult doing coloring. Notice also that I added a U to the word coloring because I'm Canadian. If you were learning American English, there's no letter U in the word color or coloring. But coloring has become quite popular for adults as well as children. As a child, I did a lot of coloring. I really liked coloring. It was a lot of fun. But as an adult, I haven't done a lot of it. But I do know I have a friend who likes to do coloring. She likes to buy coloring books, adult coloring books, which have very complex things that you need to color. Adult coloring books are not very easy. Let's look at a few, one sec here, I've forgotten how to do this. Let's look at a few questions. I'm going to do an audio check for a moment just before I do. There we go. The wind outside is getting crazier and crazier. One sec here. There we go. I've forgotten what I normally do. Give me one sec to get the first question up. This is from Rod, the Brazilian English teacher. How are you today, Mr. Bob? I'm good, Rod. Thanks for asking. Since we're in this pandemic, my favorite activities are work, series, and coffee breaks. Thanks for everything. Have a wonderful Friday. So, yes, Rod is alluding to, or there's a little foreshadowing here about what I'm going to talk about. But some people do like watching a lot of television series. That can be a hobby where you watch a lot of shows on Netflix or other things. So yes, Rod, during the pandemic, there has certainly been a change in the types of hobbies that people do. A lot of the hobbies that you do at home, because you're stuck at home, have become very popular in the world. Let me get the next question here. So Yo-Yo says, hi, Bob, long time no see. Can you please tell me what is the difference between hobbies and pastime? Pastime is about individuals. Thank you. No, a pastime and a hobby are the same thing. A pastime, the word pastime is just kind of an older word. You know, we don't use it a lot anymore, but it is definitely used. If you were to read an older book, you might read in there that one of Joe's favorite pastimes was carving wood or something like that. So it means the same thing, Yo-Yo. Just it's an older word that we don't use a lot. Mike says, English is my hobby to the core. So yes, definitely learning a language can be a hobby as well. I don't have that in my slides, Mike, but definitely learning a language can be a hobby for sure. Yeah, do you want to say hi to a few people in the chat? Hi, Robert Krasinski and 40's uncle and SEO Wu again. I see Talk Italian with Arone is here. Hi, Talk Italian with Arone. A for Anna Vasilsa. Sorry, I don't have my reading glasses on. It's a little hard to read. Of course, Todd and Dave are here moderating the chat. Hi to the two of you. And Natalia Illusion is here. Hi, Natalia. Great question, by the way, that you left in the comment the other day. Natalia was talking about how work parties can be awkward. I agreed with her. Work parties can be interesting and awkward. Vitaly Smirnov is here. Awesome to see you as well. Let's get back. Oh, and Madi's here as well. I might have mentioned that. Let's get back to the questions, though, and then eventually back to the lesson. Katerina says, hello, Bob. Do your kids have any hobbies? What are they into? So my kids all like playing video games, so I do consider that a hobby. My one daughter enjoys sewing. My one son likes doing the Rubik's Cube, and he likes all kinds of puzzles. But right now, a few of my kids are into playing chess. Chess is a board game that you're probably familiar with. It has, I think every person on the planet has seen what a chessboard with chess pieces. So some of my kids are playing chess. And if you watched my video on my other channel, my kids like going sledding. That's definitely something they like to do as well. Anna says, what is ample time? Does it mean spare time? So it's slightly different, Anna. So spare time is when you do your hobbies. Okay. So if I'm not at work and if I don't have anything important to do at home, I would say I have spare time. That means I have extra time. I can sit down and do some reading. Maybe I can make an English video. Ample time means that you have enough time to do the job you're doing, okay? So let's say Jen has to make 10 bouquets to sell at the market, and it normally takes her an hour, but she doesn't have to leave to the market for 2 hours. We would say she has ample time to get that done. Hey, I do want to say hi to the 473 people watching. You're awesome. Welcome. I'm Bob the Canadian. This is an English lesson about hobbies. I'm glad to see you here. If this is your first time here, there is a subscribe button right there. Always makes me happy when people click it. A lot of people have been clicking that lately. I'm a little overwhelmed with how many people subscribe to my channel sometimes. I like to pretend there's just 4 of you when I do a lesson. I can't imagine what it would look like to be talking to this many people. So I pretend there's 4 of you, and that makes me less nervous. Let's see here. Artur says, hi, could you explain the difference between pastime, occupation, amusement, and diversion? Thank you in advance. So a pastime is the same as a hobby. Things like photography, woodworking, sewing, reading, maybe you enjoy writing. Those are all hobbies or pastimes. Your occupation is your job. So my occupation is that I am a high school teacher. An amusement or diversion is just something you do for fun. Like you might go see a movie for amusement. You might go to an amusement park for amusement or just for a little diversion. So it's not the same as a hobby. It's really something that you just do once in a while for fun. Like maybe you go out with a friend for coffee. You could do that just as a diversion. So you don't think about work for a time. Let me see here. SL Lanka says, hi, Bob. My hobbies consist of reading books and watching movies. If you had extra time, what would you do with it? I thank you for being such an amazing teacher. I joke a lot about in my spare time, I like to have a nap, but that's not true. In the winter, when I have spare time, my hobbies are reading and playing video games. So right now I'm reading a science fiction book. I can't remember the title, sorry. And then I usually play a video game. In the summer, my hobbies are usually more outside. I like to go hiking and I like to do things in the warmer weather. So that's what I would do. Hey, before we get back to the lesson, I do want to say hi to the 489 people watching. I'm Bob the Canadian. This is an English lesson about hobbies. Let's get back to it. So your hobby might be astronomy. So if you want to have astronomy as your hobby, you'll need to buy a telescope because astronomy is a hobby where you go out at night when it's very, very dark with your telescope and you look at the night sky. So we often refer to the stars and the moon and the Milky Way as the night sky. So astronomers, so people who do astronomy, Astronomers go out in the middle of the night when it's very, very dark, and they look at the night sky, they look at stars, they look at planets, they look at the moon, and they just enjoy being outside. There's two reasons why I am not an astronomer, or why astronomy is not my hobby. One, I don't like getting up in the middle of the night, or I don't like being up late. And if you want to look at the stars or the moon, you have to stay up late. And the second reason is because there's lots of mosquitoes in Canada. And when you go out at night, they bite you. So I know that sounds kind of silly, but those are the reasons why I am not an astronomer. But I do have some interest in the night sky. You might enjoy writing. Perhaps you like writing little stories. Perhaps you like writing poems. But writing is certainly a hobby that some people have. You might also enjoy journaling or keeping a diary. So journaling or keeping a diary is when at the end of every day, you write down your thoughts about the day and you write down what you did. My mother-in-law loves journaling. So at the end of every day, she sits down and she writes down what happened that day. It's very, very cool. I look forward to reading parts of that someday. I'm curious to read about the days when I started dating Jen. I wonder what she wrote in her diary. Some people enjoy winemaking or beer making. So in Canada, you are allowed to make wine at home. You are allowed to make beer at home. And some people do this as a hobby. So they'll go and they'll buy grapes. They'll go and buy everything they need to make wine, and they will make wine at home. You can also make beer at home in small quantities. You're not allowed to make wine or make beer and sell it, but you are allowed to make wine or beer at home and just enjoy it as a hobby. I had a friend who used to do this, but the wine, it wasn't very good wine. It tasted pretty bad. It's kind of awkward when your friend makes wine and you go and you taste it, and then they say, "So, do you like it?" And it's like, "No, it doesn't taste very good." Some people enjoy wine tasting as a hobby. This is a hobby for wealthier people, for rich people. Where I live in Ontario, there are many vineyards close to me. There are a lot of wineries. A vineyard is where they grow grapes, and a winery is where they make wine. And a lot of wealthy people from Toronto, from the city of Toronto, come to my area because they would like to do some wine tasting. So they visit different wineries and they taste the wine. So your hobby might be wine tasting. Puzzles. So I mentioned the last time I did this lesson that my mom really enjoys puzzles. We also usually have a puzzle on the go in our house during the winter. We have a table in our back room where usually there's a puzzle in the winter months slowly getting finished. But a puzzle is when you have a box and it's a beautiful picture on the front and it's filled with all the puzzle pieces, and then you try to put all the puzzle pieces together. We don't actually have a puzzle out right now, but normally we do in January and February have a puzzle. And you can buy puzzles that have different amounts of pieces. The more pieces the puzzle has, the harder it is. Where am I here? Juggling. I put this one in. I don't know anyone who does juggling as a hobby, but there are some people who really enjoy juggling or other activities like juggling. I know you might like, there's something called a yo-yo that goes up and down. I know we have something with two sticks and a string, and there's a part that spins. I think it's called a Diablo. We got it as a gift from my friend from China when he came to visit. But you might just have something, maybe you juggle with bowling pins. Maybe you just juggle with small balls, but juggling might be a hobby. It's not my hobby. I can juggle a little bit. I can juggle 3 things, but it's very, very difficult. Cooking. So definitely cooking might be your hobby. Maybe you enjoy cooking meals, but you could also enjoy baking. So again, when you cook, you're preparing a meal. When you bake, you're usually making something like bread or sweet baked goods, okay? So we have something in English called baked goods, and that involves cookies or muffins all of the sweet things that you can bake. So again, cooking might be your hobby. You might enjoy going to the grocery store and buying all the ingredients. And you might have a recipe that tells you how to prepare a certain meal. So again, ingredients are what you put in when you're making something or when you're cooking something. The recipe, that is the instructions that tell you how to make the dish or how to make the item that you are cooking. So maybe you enjoy cooking as a hobby. I mentioned that my kids enjoy video games, and I also enjoy video games. This is a hobby that I think has increased in popularity every year. In fact, there are some people who play video games professionally. You can actually get paid to play video games. But the vast majority of the people in the world who play video games do it as a hobby. It's something they do to enjoy spending some time playing a game, maybe doing a quest in the game. Maybe they like racing. Maybe they like fighting games. Maybe they like games where they can pretend they're a soldier. But video games have definitely become very popular. You might play a video game on a console connected to your TV using a controller, or you might play a video game on your computer using your keyboard and your mouse. Either way, there are many people in the world that like playing video games. A lot of fun. There are board games. So I kind of mentioned board games earlier. I mentioned the game of chess, but board games are games you play at a table with other people. Some people even have a special table for playing board games. We have a table that we set up, that a small table that fits 4 people nicely when we play board games. Hey, I do want to stop and thank Vasilisa for the super chat. Thank you so much. That is awesome of you. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate the support. But there are many kinds of board games. In English, we have games like Monopoly, checkers and chess would be considered board games. In addition to board games, people might play card games. So you might have a deck of cards. You might shuffle the cards and deal the cards to other people and play a game like Rummy or Bridge. Or if you're playing with little kids, you might play a game called Go Fish. So board games and card games are definitely another thing that people do as a hobby. This, again, is a hobby that I don't do. This person is sculpting. A sculptor is someone who sculpts, okay? That's when you take clay or other things and you create something out of it. In Canada, we have people who do ice sculpting, and they might do ice sculpting in the middle of the winter. They might get paid to do it, but some people do it just for fun. But you can sculpt things out of wood. You can sculpt things out of ice. You can sculpt things out of clay. But it's simply the act of creating something 3-dimensional. So it's different than painting, which is flat and 2-dimensional. When you sculpt, you make something that's 3-dimensional. So I don't think I would be good at it. I don't think I have the patience, and I don't think I have the eye for it. In English, when you have an eye for something, it means you're good at designing it. Okay, so I don't have an eye for drawing or painting or sculpting. Not very good. Let's see here. Wood carving. So this is actually somewhat popular in Canada. A lot of people will carve things out of wood. In particular, they'll carve things like ducks. You can see a wooden duck here. In the far picture, you can see that person carved a wooden spoon. But wood carving is definitely a hobby that some people do, especially in the winter months. But also in Canada, many people will go up north in the summer and they'll go to a small cottage on a lake. And one of the things they might do when they're there is they might do a little bit of wood carving. They might go canoeing on the lake. It's definitely a hobby that some people enjoy. Probably not super popular, but it definitely is a hobby. Pottery. So when you are doing pottery, you have a pottery wheel. So that's a flat thing that spins and you control the speed with your foot. And you would put clay on the pottery wheel and then you would form it with your hands. The person who does pottery is called a potter. So if you said, oh, I've taken up pottery in my spare time, someone might say, oh, so you're a potter. So pottery is another hobby. I have a couple friends actually that do pottery. Notice how I talk about hobbies, right? Like you take up pottery, they do pottery. That's the English, those are the English phrases you would use to talk about pottery. Let me see here. I'm going to flip to questions again, but I'm also going to flip, just give me one moment here. I'm just going to flip the chat as I do at this point every lesson. So we are in members only chat mode, but I'm also going to answer questions from everyone else. This can get a little confusing for those of you watching because you'll see a question here, but I'm actually answering a question from the chat. So I'll try to mention when I'm doing that. But if you are a member, if you clicked the join button at some time in the past, and if your name is in green, you can ask questions directly in the chat right now. It is no problem. I will totally answer questions from the chat and from the forum at the same time. Let's see here. First question from the chat. If you look over at the chat, Avjini says, "Good morning, teacher. Nice to see you again. What favorite hobby did you have in childhood?" I liked reading, and I actually liked target shooting. So I had a what's called a BB gun. So I would shoot cans. I would have pop cans on the fence, and I would shoot them off. I also had a slingshot when I was a kid. That was a lot of fun, but definitely reading. I've always been a reader. Going over here for the next question, Katerina says, "Nice day, dear teacher Bob. I have two questions. Is there a national pastime in your town? And what's your favorite hobby at the age of 30? Have a delicious holiday." So I would say the pastime in my town is probably hockey. I know that's a sport, but that's the pastime. And my favorite hobby at age 30, what did I really like doing at age 30? I just loved computers, okay? I loved building computers, and I liked computer games. So that was definitely my hobby. Next question I'm going to take from over in the chat. Let's see here. Al Gore says, "I am cold, Rod, the Brazilian English teacher. There's lots of snow in Russia, and I've been to Rio in 2010, stayed at Copacabana. Very cool." So Al's having a conversation there. Vitaly says, "Would you show us the view from your window?" I can't do that easily, Vitaly, but it's just white and snowy. If you go and watch the video on my short English channel, you'll see what it looks like outside. Again, questions from the chat. Key Park says, "I like reading and writing as a hobby. Now I can read a bit of English. Hopefully I can write in English." Yes, very cool. So learning a language is a hobby, isn't it? Definitely is a hobby for some people. Al Gore, "Bob, is there a reply function in this chat?" I can reply in the chat by typing, but I don't really have time, Al, to do that. A for Anna, "Can we say organizing as a hobby?" I guess so. Your hobby might be organizing and cleaning your house, but that sounds more like work than a hobby. But if you really enjoy it, you could say it's a hobby. In fact, A for Anna, some people do scrapbooking as a hobby, or they put together photos in an album, and that can be kind of considered organizing as well. So again, still taking questions from the chat. Let's see here. Xiao Wu says, "Hi, Bob. I love watching your video. It became another hobby for me." Awesome. And then let me get the next question from the forum here. Question is from Vasilisa Kono, who is also in the chat, by the way. "Hi, Bob. How are you? My question, do you have some hobbies, and what hobbies if you have them?" I think right now my main hobby would be reading. It still is. Like if I was to look at my whole life, reading has been something I've done my whole life. That has been a hobby that I have done since I was old enough to read. Kawa says, "What is the best way to find out what to choose as a hobby?" You know, you want to do something that makes you happy, something that makes you smile, and something that you enjoy. If you do a hobby, if you do something and it makes you stressed and angry, don't do that as a hobby. So if you like nature, maybe hiking is a good hobby. Maybe going out and taking photographs is a good hobby. Maybe bird watching is a good hobby. That works as well. Next question from the chat from Rod. "Mr. Bob, can you think of any hobby or pastime one of your kids has as well as you did or still do?" So my kids do like to read, so we do share that hobby. We went hiking a lot in the fall, and I enjoyed the hiking And I hoped my kids would, but I don't think they all enjoyed it as much. I think for the first couple times we went, they enjoyed it. By the way, hiking is when you go walk outside in nature. So I'm not sure we share that one. Let me just look back at the chat questions to make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's see here. Al Gore. Let's see here. Oh, no, I mean, can you click? No, I can't do that, Al. You can do that with something called StreamYards, but I don't have that ability to put it on the screen. I should figure out how to do that. Norma says, my hobbies are very calm now. I enjoy puzzles, music, reading, and especially yoga. Have you ever practiced yoga? I have attempted to do some yoga. I don't have a lot of patience, though. I need to be a calmer person to enjoy yoga, I think. Let's see here. Al Gore, what about hunting, Bob? Canada has the best hunting lands in the world. I don't hunt, but I have many friends who very much enjoy hunting. They enjoy hunting through the fall and winter. So it's not one of my hobbies, Al, but definitely it is a common hobby, especially amongst people who live out in the country. Let's see here. I get my question form answered. Your favorite hobby is reading. Okay, awesome. So that's from Semra. And then Al Gore, another question from the chat. Bob, do you play hockey? Yes, a little bit, but I haven't played for years, and I never played a lot. So I played hockey as a kid on the pond or on the river, but I did have hockey equipment, but I never really played on a team very much, not like some other Canadians have done. Evgeny, Bob, if you like to read, what is your favorite writer? For me, it's Joe Nesbo. I like Orson Scott Card. I've read a lot of books. They're science fiction books. Definitely enjoyable as an author. Let's see here. Next question. Back to the forum. Says from Vitaly Smirnov. Hello, Teacher Bob. How have you been there? Good. Sorry, I should slow down a bit. I don't know why I'm talking so fast. Have you ever tried piloting a drone? I have not, but I would love to get a drone someday, especially because Jen's flowers on our flower farm look very beautiful in the summer. I would love to get a drone someday and then be able to fly it and look at some of the things Jen is growing. Back to the members only chat. Madi says, let's see here. Does anyone from do any of your children coping your do they copy my hobbies? Not really. They do like video games. So it's pretty common in our house in the winter to see a lot of people playing video games. Vitaly says, do you knit, teacher? No, but I'm not opposed to learning how to knit someday. It's supposed to be very relaxing, but I don't know. We'll see. My grandma was a knitter. Actually, both of my grandmothers were very skilled at knitting because I think when they grew up, they did have to make a lot of their own clothes. So I still have one of my winter hats, I think was made by one of my grandmothers or one of her friends, because back then, a lot of people knitted. Let's see here. Sometimes your hobby, this is from A for Anna from the chat. Sometimes your hobby requires a lot of sacrifices, for example, money and time. Yes, sometimes some hobbies are very, very expensive. That's true. Al says, thanks for answering my questions. No problem. Let me get to the next question from Henry. Let's see here. Henry from Taiwan says, hi, Teacher Bob. Is hobby horse used one word or hobby horse 2 words? Thank you for your help. So that is an older word, and I don't actually know, so I'm looking it up quick. So I think it's 2 words, actually. Nope, it looks like it's one. Oh, it's 1 or 2. Most of the spellings are 2 words. So a hobby horse is like a toy that kids use. It's like a little toy horse that they pretend to ride around on. It's like a stick with a horse head. That sounds kind of funny, but that's the toy. Once again, what are your hobbies, Mr. Bob? Definitely reading and video games are 2 of my hobbies right now. Let's see here. Mohammed says, hi, Bob. Learning a new language is one of the best hobbies. It's amazing to talk with others in their language. I can speak Kurdish, Persian, Arabic, English, and some Spanish. That's amazing, Mohammed. That is very cool. And yes, you're right. Especially when you travel a little bit, it's really cool when you can speak another language with someone. Lots of fun. Back to the chat for a couple more questions, and then we'll go back to the lesson. Vitaly says, I recommend you buying a drone. It is one of the most interesting hobbies to have. I think I will someday. You do need a license now in Canada to fly a drone, though. So I have to take a test to get a drone license. So we'll see. Evgeny, thanks for the response. You're doing a great job today, as always. You're welcome. Samra says, thank you for the mention of my question, Bob. When you say my name on your live, I feel happy. That is good to hear my name from your mouth. Thanks again. No problem, Samra. It's fun to answer questions and to be able to make you smile. No problem. Madi says, what's your advice for someone who doesn't explore his or her hobbies? So, one of the things that can happen in life is some people get very, very busy and then they don't have enough time to explore a hobby. I know I experienced that when I was in my late 20s and early 30s. I worked so much that I didn't have time to pursue a hobby or to do a hobby. So what, I don't know, just in English, we say stop and smell the roses. Sometimes you need to stop working and you just need to find something to do that makes you smile and helps you relax a little bit, for sure. Al says language opens the doors to the world, for sure. Yes, definitely. Hey, so we're going to go back to the lesson. Let me just do an audio check for a sec. Thanks again to all of my members. I've turned members only chat off so everyone can chat again. Thanks for being members. Thanks for supporting me and helping me do this. It makes it easier when I have members, and I appreciate it. So thanks again. Let's get back to the lesson, though. Let me just check one other thing before I do. I just wanted to see how far I am on the questions. We're moving right along, so that's not too bad. Let's get back to pottery. So I say this word wrong sometimes, but there are 3 things or more that people do as a hobby that you can find in the newspaper or that you can buy little books that contain them. One is Sudokus. Sudokus, I think I'm saying that right. A Sudoku is basically a math/number puzzle where you have to figure out which number is missing from all of the blanks. Hey, I do want to say thanks to Kenneth for the super chat. He says, good morning, Bob. I'm from Dominican Republic. I don't speak English yet, but I try with your help. Can you recommend any series on Netflix to help me learn? So I can't right now. I haven't looked at Netflix for a while, Kenneth, but certainly fine. I know Netflix added the ability to slow the videos down recently, so you can play them back at a slower speed every once in a while if you have trouble understanding part of it. But definitely, Kenneth, Friends used to be on Netflix, although Friends is getting a little bit old, so some of the vocabulary isn't current anymore. But if it's still on there, I would watch that. Crossword puzzle is a puzzle where they give you little hints and you have to figure out what word goes horizontally or vertically. Did you get that? Horizontally is this way and vertically is this way. You can remember horizontal goes this way because horizon, when you look really far, you see the horizon is almost the same word as horizontal. And then a word search is where there's a list of words, and then you need to find those words in the big box that has all the letters in it. So another very common thing, some people will do a crossword puzzle every Saturday. They might get a newspaper and it might have a Saturday crossword puzzle in it, or a word search. When I was a kid, the newspaper had a word search, and my brothers and sisters and I would fight over who got to do the word search. So we definitely fought a lot about who got to do the word search. My mom had to make a list and say whose turn it was to do the word search every week. Of course, we have reading. I think I mentioned this earlier a few times. I might have even had a slide on this. No, I didn't. So reading is a very, very popular hobby, a very popular thing to do to relax. We always say reading for pleasure. So you read just to enjoy the story. Calligraphy. So this is not something I'm super familiar with, but I do know someone who does calligraphy. We live in a world where everyone prints everything out from a computer, but people have started to really learn again how to write with a pen and how to write script and beautiful artistic writing. and we call it calligraphy. It's very, very popular in some cultures. But in North America, there are people who have started to do calligraphy as a hobby, and they really enjoy it. Collecting. Okay, so collecting takes many, many forms. You can collect stamps. You can collect hockey cards or baseball cards or football cards. You can have a rock collection, but there are just many, many types of collecting that you can do. It is probably a very common hobby around the world. I know I had a friend who had, he collected pop bottle lids. Like he collected the lids from all different kinds of soda. I do have a friend who has a hockey card collection. And then I think if American English with this guy, Brent, was here, he probably knows people that have baseball card collections. Some people collect t-shirts. If people really like a sports team, they might collect what we would call sports paraphernalia. That's a big word, but they might have a hat, a t-shirt, all from that sports team. So collecting is a very, very popular hobby. I think probably around the world. I'm thinking of starting a stamp collection because I have a lot of stamps from people who have sent me postcards. So we'll see. Maybe someday I'll start to put those all into a stamp collection book. We'll see. Samra in the chat says that they used to collect different objects before. I had a rock collection when I was a kid. I had a special place where I had all different rocks in my room. Magic. So maybe one of your hobbies is magic. So if you like magic, maybe you've learned a few tricks. Maybe you can do some simple magic tricks. So maybe you know a few card tricks where you can pretend that you actually know real magic. But magic is something that you learn to do different tricks and illusions so that people think, so people can't figure out how you did it. So a couple of my kids tried to do some magic tricks at one point. And I think if they worked at it, they could get really good at it. But magic might be another thing that you do as a hobby. Welding. So this is an interesting one because welding can be a job. If you weld things, you are a welder. A welder makes it so two pieces of metal or steel get fused together or welded together. This man is welding. He is a welder. But some people do welding as a hobby. I have a friend who makes things out of metal. He makes art out of metal, and he does a lot of welding. So this is kind of a funny one as a hobby, but some people do enjoy making things out of wood. And if you enjoy making things out of metal, you might do a little bit of welding when you do that. So again, welding is when you use really high voltage electricity to make it so two pieces of metal become welded together. Drawing. So drawing or sketching are all different ways to, on a piece of paper, create something. So maybe you like sitting outside at the park with a pad of paper and you like just doing some sketching or drawing. Maybe you see a nice tree and you just sit down and you draw or sketch the tree. By the way, I'm using the verb to draw and to sketch interchangeably. When you draw or sketch, it simply means you're using a pencil to kind of outline and shade something in real life on a piece of paper. Let me see here. I'm just going to check where I'm at. Yes, we are almost, there we go. Gardening. Maybe you really enjoy growing flowers. Maybe you enjoy growing vegetables. Gardening is something that you do outside in the warmer months if you have a spot where you can do it. You obviously need to have a place where you can have a garden so that you can grow things. You might have a vegetable garden where you grow vegetables, or you might have what we call flower beds. Flower beds are small gardens where you grow flowers. So you might have a garden where you grow vegetables, or you might have a flower bed where you might have a garden where you grow vegetables, or you might have a flower bed where you grow some flowers. You can also have a flower garden, but generally along the sides of people's houses, they have what we call flower beds. Shopping. So this is kind of a strange hobby, and it's not really a hobby, But I think some people like shopping as a hobby. They just like going and buying things, or they like going and looking at things and maybe not buying them. But shopping can also be a hobby. It requires money. This is one of the reasons why shopping is not one of my hobbies. I like going to the mall, but I don't like buying things. So I guess you could say going to the mall is my hobby, but buying things at the mall is not my hobby. Geocaching. So this is an interesting hobby. I've done it a couple times, and it's where you take your phone, and on your phone you have GPS, so you can see where you are in the world. And if you do geocaching, you can find places where people have hidden small things, and then you can go and find that thing. And usually there's a little piece of paper that you can write your name on. You know, Bob the Canadian was here February 5th, 2021. And sometimes people will leave other little things. I've done it twice. It's kind of interesting because you have to find the hidden object. Maybe it's in a tree or under a bridge. But geocaching certainly is a cool hobby. You should try it someday if you're bored. I might do a little more of it in the spring when I'm hiking with my kids. Metal detecting. So you can see this gentleman is at the beach and he has a metal detector and he is looking for metal objects under the sand. He's probably looking for coins like money or rings. He's looking for things that people have lost, and he's using a metal detector to find it. My brother-in-law had a metal detector once, and it was kind of fun, but we never found anything cool. We just found old rusty nails. We didn't find anything cool, but metal detecting is something that you might do at a beach or somewhere where it's easy to dig because you are looking for things that people have found. Kite flying. So this is popular in a lot of places. You might have a kite and you might enjoy flying your kite outside. You need a windy day to fly your kite. Today would not be a good day to fly a kite here because the wind is 80 to 100 kilometers an hour today. That's a little bit, that's too much wind. But you might enjoy going outside. You might enjoy flying your kite. When I was a kid, I had a kite and my friend had a kite. We had the kind of kite with two strings so you could steer it. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that type of kite. In fact, I should get a kite like that again. That was a fun kite to have. If you have lots of money, you might, excuse me, you might enjoy horseback riding. I say that because horses are kind of expensive. They eat a lot of hay, they eat a lot of food. But if you like horses, you might have a horse, or you might simply go somewhere and pay money in order to go horseback riding. I have never been horseback riding. I think I have been on a horse once in my life. I think I would be afraid of falling off if I went on a horse. My grandfather had horses, though. My grandfather was a farmer in Holland, and he grew up before everyone had tractors. So he knew how to take care of horses, and he always had a horse on his farm, but I never got a chance to ride it. He was apparently really good at taking care of horses. But horseback riding is now a hobby that some people do. Model railroading. I see in the chat, Madi says that he used to ride horses. Very cool. Maybe I should try that someday. I should maybe try doing some horseback riding. It might be fun. Model railroading. So this is where you buy really small trains and really small tracks, and you build on a big piece of wood or on a table. You build a model railroad. Maybe you have little houses, or like in this picture, a little train station. But model railroading is something that some people do as a hobby. They buy different little train cars. So they buy the train, the engine, and they buy little train cars and little people, and they kind of create a miniature railway station or a miniature railroad. So model railroading. It's also called miniature railroading, I think. Rocketry. So this is something my brother did when I was a kid. he would build model rockets. So you can also call this model rocketry. So he would build small rockets and then he would launch the rocket up in the air. And one time he built a really nice rocket and we launched it and we watched it come down and then we couldn't find it back. It kind of fell along the river in the deep grass. So we lost his model rocket. But rocketry is something else that people might do as a hobby. They might really enjoy building small rockets and then going on a Saturday or on the weekend to launch their rocket. They probably count down like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And then everyone yells blast off and the rocket goes up in the air. When it gets to the top, a parachute comes out and then it comes down again. So rocketry, super fun. Bird watching. So bird watching is something, I was going to say this is something older people do, but not necessarily. You can be any age. You need a pair of binoculars and you'll go out when you have spare time and you'll look for different birds. You might even keep a list of all the different types of birds that you have seen. But bird watching is something I have not done, but I think I could do this someday. I think I might actually enjoy bird watching because I do like hiking, and it would be fun when I'm hiking if I had a small pair of binoculars with me to just look for different birds and then kind of keep a list of what birds I have seen. That was the last slide. I'm going to jump back to the questions now. Give me 1 second to pull those up. And we will finish off the questions here. Let me check where I am. I've got a few left, but we'll work through them. Miguel says, what is the difference between hobbies and pastimes? They are the same thing, but pastime is an older word that we don't use a lot anymore. Janet, I usually play mahjong with my family. It's also a popular pastime in Taiwan. Yes, that is a fun game. I've only played it on the computer by myself. I have never played the version where you play with other people. I should try that someday. I should get a mahjong set. Let's see here. Annette from Quebec. Hello, Bob. Do you consider your Bob channels and all you do for that as a hobby or as a job? It's kind of both now, Annette. So it started as a hobby, but eventually it's more like a job. It's hard to say. I like it so much and it brings me a lot of joy. I would say it's a hobby, but I also spend a lot of time on it. And I do make a little bit of money from the advertisements. So it is a little bit like a job. So I would say it is both. Let's see here. David says, hi, Bob. I appreciate your work. No problem, David. My question, how much free time do you usually have? What do you like to do with your free time? Do you prefer to relax or to be active? So because I have 5 kids, Jen and I have 5 kids, we don't have as much spare time or free time as we used to. Because of the pandemic, we have a lot more spare time. But generally, I spend a lot of my spare time doing dad things, like bringing kids to dance class or picking kids up from dance class, bringing kids to the dentist, those types of things. So parents with children generally don't have a lot of free time. But when I do like to read. And 2 of my kids can actually drive now. They're old enough to drive. So that helps a lot. Then if they have a dentist appointment, they can drive there themselves. So that's kind of cool. Let's see here. Rosa says, hi, Bob. Thanks for your video. Or hello, thanks for your video. It isn't related to hobbies or maybe learning English. Is it lock up and lock down the same thing? No. So lockdown is when the government says you can't go out. When you're locked up, it means the police have put you in jail. So very different things. Let's see here. Amir says, studying is a hobby for me. Little correction there, Amir. But the thing is, I don't have a good memory for memorizing English vocabulary, and it's really hard for me. Any suggestions? Flashcards, use the website Quizlet. Very, very helpful. Make little Quizlet sets for yourself and use that to practice. Hey, I do want to say hi to the 584 people watching. Sometimes I forget to say hi. It's nice just to say hi. Awesome that you're here. Thanks for watching. If you're wondering what's going on, I'm Bob the Canadian. We're doing a little English lesson right now on hobbies, and I'm just answering viewer questions as we wrap up this lesson. So anyways, I'm Bob the Canadian. I teach English here on YouTube. Let's get to the rest of the questions here. I think I'm getting close to being done, slowly but surely. Alice says, my favorite pastime now is watching TV series on Netflix. I'm so grateful that my electricity supply is fine. Do you have a current favorite TV series, Bob? I'm watching, what did I watch? I'm watching a series called The Expanse. It's a science fiction series, and I'm watching season 5. I have to watch the last episode yet, so don't tell me what happened. I don't want any spoilers. Let's see here. Talk Italian with the Rone says, have you discovered a new hobby during this pandemic besides YouTube and gardening? No, I just did a lot of my normal hobbies more, that's for sure. Bartosz says, my hobby is learning new dishes. Do you like cooking? Greetings from Poland. I do like cooking. I think it's something that I will get better at as I get older, because right now, as I said, we have 5 kids. We have to cook really large meals and really healthy meals, so we don't explore fine dining. Fine dining is like fancier food. Lim KT says, is reading one of your hobbies? Yes, reading is definitely one of my hobbies. Let's see. Eduardo says, good morning, Mr. Bob. Greetings from Brazil. Hi, Eduardo. When you are married and have kids, it's almost impossible to have me time. Chores and homework are daily routine. Yes, I think that's what I was just mentioning, right? So cool that you're kind of saying the same thing as me. Me time is an English phrase meaning time to yourself, okay? You'll often hear parents say, oh, I just need some me time. So they just need some time where there's no children asking for things. I love my kids, by the way, but sometimes it feels like there's a lot of work to do. Let's see here. Semra, again, what is your favorite hobby, Teacher Bob? Thank you. Thank you. Nice to watch you. Again, reading, video games. I think making videos, making English lessons is kind of a hobby. Let's see here. Jay says, hi, my hobby is planting herbs for brewing tea and thus enjoying it. However, do you think planting is different from gardening? No, I think it's the same. I mean, you can have house plants, you can have plants outside. You can do bonsai where you do really tiny plants, but that's very cool. Herbs for making tea. Very, very cool. I don't think we can grow any tea plants in Canada. If we could, we would probably do more of it. Most of our tea comes from your part of the world. Let's see here. Stan, hi Bob. Have you ever tried to juggle? I went to the circus school when I was a child and I still can juggle. I can juggle a little bit, but I should practice a lot more, Stan. I think I'm a little rusty. In English, when you say you're rusty at something, it means you used to be able to do it, but now you're not as good at it. Let's see here. Susie says, morning teacher, my question is whether I can use calligraphy. Example, I did calligraphy this afternoon. Yes, you could definitely say that. And again, we had the slide on calligraphy. You could say, I'm going to do some calligraphy this afternoon. Or last night I did some calligraphy to relax and to enjoy myself. Let's see here. Joyanne says, hi, Teacher Bob. One of my favorite hobbies has recently become taking long walks. Makes me feel better and stay healthy. Do you like taking long walks too? Yes, I go almost every day, although I must admit, I haven't been that good lately. I did go for a long walk yesterday, but 2 days before that, I didn't go for a walk. I kind of took a couple days off. Hey, folks. We did it. We did a 1-hour lesson on hobbies and pastimes. Thank you so much for watching and being here. Remember, a couple things you can do. If there were parts you didn't understand, come back in a day or two and there will be English subtitles and rewatch that part. Or play the lesson back later in the background, because when you listen to something twice, it can really help with your English learning. There's also a shorter version of this lesson that will come out in a couple days, where I take out the parts where I answered user questions. So it's just the lesson, and it's usually about 30 minutes long. That's a great way to review all of the new phrases and vocabulary that you just learned. I do want to say thanks to Todd and Dave for moderating again. You guys are awesome. I do want to mention that there is a live question and answer lesson tomorrow again at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please come and watch that. Join in as well. Where in that lesson, I'll answer almost any question. And if you haven't watched my recent video, let me put a link to it for you. I'm going to get Nightbot to do this. Have a look at it. I did a little video earlier this week where I just simply talked about myself in the videos I make. Maybe it's not that interesting of a lesson, but if you have a moment, please go and watch that as well, if you don't have anything to do. I hope you have a great Friday. I know some of you are done your Friday. I still have to work all day today, and I'm happy that the power stayed on while I did this live lesson. Anyways, Bob the Canadian here. You're learning English with me. Thank you so much for just being subscribers. If you're not, there's a button there you can click. Thank you. Big thank you to my members who have clicked the join button below to support my channel. You guys are awesome. See you later. Have a great day. You guys, you're the best.